Jan Femer was born in Amsterdam, a quiet boy who struggled to speak clearly. His stutter made him a target of ridicule in school. Children mocked him, and teachers ignored him. But deep inside, Jan promised himself that one day, no one would ever laugh at him again. Jan grew up in a poor neighborhood where survival came first. He spent most of his teenage years watching older boys make easy money from illegal deals. They wore gold chains, drove fast cars, and had power. Everything he didn't have. Behind his calm face, Jan carried silent rage. Every insult, every humiliation fueled his hunger to be respected. His stutter became less noticeable when he was angry. It was as if crime gave him confidence. He started small, stealing bicycles, breaking into cars, selling fake watches. But he was smart, careful not to get caught. People noticed his discipline. Unlike other boys, Jan never bragged about what he did. He moved quietly, like a shadow. One night, a man named Opa Henk, a local smuggler, saw Jan fighting off two older boys in the street. Impressed by his fearlessness, he invited Jan to work for him, moving stolen goods across Amsterdam's canals. Opa Henk taught him the code of the underworld. Jan listened. He learned fast. He began to understand that silence was power, and that fear was a weapon. Because of his speech problem, other criminals called him the Stotteraar, meaning the stutterer. What started as mockery turned into fear. Everyone knew that when the Stotteraar showed up, something bad was about to happen. By his mid-20s, Jan was no longer a small-time thief. He managed smuggling routes from Rotterdam to Antwerp. He dealt in cigarettes, weapons, and later, drugs. His organization grew fast, and his reputation grew faster. Jan wasn't loud, but his actions spoke for him. When someone crossed him, they disappeared. When a rival refused to pay, his car exploded. Soon, his name echoed in Amsterdam's criminal cafes as one not to be messed with. Jan expanded his network into Belgium. Antwerp became one of his strongholds, where he controlled drug shipments and money laundering operations. He built alliances, but none lasted long. He trusted no one. Unlike most crime lords, Jan didn't show off. No fancy suits, no loud parties. He preferred to stay low-key, jeans, jacket, cigarette in hand, quietly giving orders. His silence made him more frightening than shouting ever could. When Jan spoke, he stuttered. But every word carried weight. His men said they feared his silence more than his voice. Because silence meant he was thinking. And when he started thinking, someone usually got hurt. By the early 1990s, Jan had made millions. He owned warehouses, trucking companies, and front businesses. But he always kept his distance, hiding behind layers of middlemen. Few people ever met him directly. His empire thrived on cocaine and synthetic drugs. He partnered with South American suppliers and Eastern European transporters. The Dutch underworld was shifting, and Jan Femer stood at its center. Police called him untouchable. Criminals called him the quiet one. Even politicians whispered his name. People feared him not just for his power, but for his unpredictability. One of his close associates, a man named Piet van Dijk, began secretly working with the police. Jan sensed betrayal before it happened. One night, Piet's body was found in his car, burned beyond recognition. That killing wasn't just revenge. It was a message. Jan was reminding everyone. Betrayal had only one reward: death. From then, no one dared to cross him. The Dutch police launched multiple investigations. Wiretaps, surveillance, informants. But Jan was always one step ahead. He moved like smoke. Impossible to catch, impossible to predict. By the 2000s, younger criminals wanted their share of power. They were reckless, loud, and disloyal. Jan saw them as a threat. Wars began. Silent assassinations, car bombings, and disappearances became weekly news. One of his main rivals was a Moroccan-Belgian gang expanding in Antwerp. Tensions grew as both sides fought for control of cocaine shipments coming through the port. To calm the war, John tried to negotiate. He met with Najib Bobu and others. But peace in the underworld is never real. It's just a pause before the next betrayal. John agreed to meet someone for a business talk. It was supposed to be safe. But as he walked into the meeting spot, something felt off. He noticed a parked car that hadn't moved in hours. Before he could turn back, gunshots rang out. The quiet Amsterdam evening turned red with blood. John fell to the ground, hit multiple times. Witnesses said the shooters came in a dark vehicle and disappeared fast. Jan Femer, the man who once ruled the streets, was dead. The city that once feared his silence now whispered his name with disbelief. His empire started to crumble within days. The police called it a targeted assassination. Newspapers screamed his nickname on front pages. Every rival gang started preparing, because when one king falls, others rise to claim his throne. His funeral was quiet but heavily guarded. Few people dared to attend. Those who came looked around nervously, because in the Dutch underworld, even funerals could become ambushes. For months, Amsterdam's criminal world fell silent. Nobody wanted to make the next move. Everyone waited to see who would take over. Jan's absence created a dangerous vacuum. Detectives worked day and night, connecting dots between Belgium, Morocco, and the Netherlands. But nobody talked. Fear ruled stronger than the law. Soon after his death, several connected figures were shot or vanished. It was like an invisible war, one killing leading to another, revenge without end. Despite his crimes, many in the underworld respected him for one thing: his discipline. He built an empire without ever shouting, without showing off. His story became a lesson. Power doesn't always make noise. Ironically, the thing that once made people laugh, his stutter, became his identity in death. The Stotteraar became a legend whispered in fear, like a ghost story criminals told each other at night. Jan had a small family, a wife and 2 children, who lived quietly away from his world. After his death, they disappeared completely. No one ever heard from them again. His death changed the balance of power. Younger gangs rose quickly, bringing more chaos and less discipline. The old codes of the underworld died with him. Journalists made documentaries, books, and interviews about John's life. But no one ever really knew him. He had no close friends, no recorded voice, only stories. When police opened his file, they found almost nothing. No phone calls, no signatures, no clear links. It was as if Jan Femer existed in the shadows, never leaving a trace. Even years after his death, some witnesses refused to talk about him. "He's gone," one said, "but his silence still scares us." Jan's story teaches a dark truth. Crime gives power, but it also takes your peace. Every secret deal, every betrayal, every killing, it all comes back eventually. Old gang members say that sometimes late at night when it rains on Amsterdam's streets, they feel watched. They say the city still remembers de Stotteraar. He fought his whole life to be respected, but in the end, he was feared, not loved. And that fear became his curse. Because even in death, people only whispered his name. Jan Femer's life was a warning written in blood, that silence can be louder than words, and power can destroy those who chase it. And now, his story leaves one question for us all. Was it respect he wanted, or revenge for being ignored his whole life?